Hello out there. Thank you so much for having me speak to you tonight about the deep impact that the Tim Hortons Children's Foundation has had on my life. I am grateful that all of you are so giving of your busy lives to take the time and eat this delicious food, to be here tonight and enjoy this beautiful evening together. Today, I come to you with a simple message. It's been a very long time since I was involved in camp. To be honest, it's not something I even think about all that much anymore. It was when I was a child. But I know very deeply that the impact of investing in youth through this leadership and bursary program, it works. It creates a ripple effect that changes entire communities. And I've seen it for myself, and I've seen it in the other people in my cohort. It's not just about impacting one person and their individual life. What this program does, because it is so unique, I don't think there's anything like it out there, is what it does is it facilitates systems change. It creates energy and cultivates ability in motivated individuals, and by proxy, in their families and communities who would have otherwise been held back by barriers that were beyond their control. It is only today, I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm lucky, I'm stable, I'm successful, I have a career that I love. But it's only today that I'm beginning to realize that so much of my current ease with life, my confidence to realize my drive and sense of passion for so much, always reads back to my experiences with the foundation. It's connected directly to these experiences attending camp, where we were trompsing across the mosquito-filled wilderness for weeks at a time. I was a member of the very first cohort, so we did a lot of trompsing. Today, I have a deep sense that anything is possible. It was at camp where this started. It was only at camp where I came to understand that I was a person of worth and that I could choose to live a different path than the one that had been laid out for me, that I didn't have to be stuck. Then, and this is why this program is so unique, after many years of camp attendance, which would have been enough, I was offered an incredible chance, a bursary to attend college. This bursary allowed me to focus on my studies and become the person I am today. It is this combination that is so magical of experiential wilderness-based learning for youth, and then taking that, like giving them the dream and the desire, the passion, and then taking that and allowing them to go to college so that they can experience their promise. This is where the ideas and skills gained from so many years of leadership training become concrete reality. So for me, what is my story? Why am I unique? Not that, but I grew up in a small conservative ranching town in rural British Columbia. Divorce was an unforgivable sin, and isolation was what happened to families who didn't play by the rules. My parents, lovely as they are, definitely ignored the playbook, and my childhood was lonely. You can picture rolling grasslands, cowboys, tumbleweeds, and a set of parents who, while loving and incredibly creative, were fated by their own tumultuous upbringings to chaos, and they really had an inability to hold it together. My father was a beautiful photographer and museum exhibit designer, but he was also a man with a troubled past. As a child, my dad spent many years in a cold Regina orphanage. Family lore holds it that once my father wore his coat for an entire year, hoping for that second when he would break through the gate and run and find his mom out there. And this never happened. Instead, he ended up in the hamster wheel of foster care, and luckily, in a twist of good fate, was eventually adopted by a stable family with some prairie values that I got to have. But he never quite mastered them. He had a deep love for photography, fly fishing, and possessed completely inferior coping skills that ensured my childhood was a topsy-turvy gamut that oscillated wildly between happy times and then many years of closet alcohol abuse, heroin addiction, and some other complicated things. My mother was a bohemian and is a bohemian free spirit, and she was a product of an angry World War II veteran who had loved schemes, all the schemes. He liked the idea that he would get rich quick. Usually, this ended up in selling the farm, packing up the metaphorical wagon, and he moving on to the next horizon. They tried chicken houses, mushrooms, house flipping, hotels, you name it, all of the schemes. He had hope and no business sense at all. So my parents were raised by these people, and at their hearts, incredibly kind people, were not a stable romantic pairing, and it probably shouldn't have happened. They divorced in a very messy fashion when I was 7. My younger brother was an infant, and my mom began the hard process of rebuilding her life as a single parent with a very angry ex-husband. By 12, I was more of an adult than I am in ways now and was headed down a confusing path. But I was also the kind of child who was very nerdy. I loved facts and classical music. I was obsessed with Egypt, weather patterns, classical piano, and so I was a lonely super nerd in a redneck town with crazy parents. It wasn't a good time. I started hanging out with an older crowd, lots of older boys, and experimenting with, let's say, alternative ways of living. And trouble was probably on the horizon. And thankfully, a very kind teacher took notice and recommended the precocious, nerdy, math-obsessed me to summer camp. It was here at camp that the current seeds of my stability were born. This initial camp experience in Quebec turned into many summers. Who would have known at the time, right, that I was involved with the youth leadership program? And that, again, what is so amazing is that this was such a commitment that it lasted my entire teenage years and through more than one degree. This is what allowed me to build the functional life that I have today. In this way, the power of the Tim Hortons Foundation is hard to isolate into a single story. The stories that came to mind when I was reflecting were things like feeling cared for and safe, sleeping with my camp family under the stars in the lakes of Ontario, despite a huge fear of raccoons and an even larger fear of the dark. It was in learning to push my comfort zone past muscle fatigue and the welled-up sadness that I just carried when we were on these long backpacking trips. It was where I found my own resilience and strength. The memories from camp are things like the classic camp exercises that use string and chalk and obstacle courses high in the sky to help teens process anger, to learn to create healthy boundaries, to only surround ourselves with people who treat us with kindness, gentleness, and love. Folks, I use this stuff all the time now. I'm always giving my friends camp exercises when they're in breakups with bad men or can't get a job or just don't know how to do their dishes. Like, camp exercises are helpful. The power of the foundation is in these days. It's in how it felt when I was a teenager and noticed this emerging pride at my capacity to motivate our group with silly songs when we had a steep pass to get over and there were too many bugs. It's the memories of being 17, quiet, alone in the sunrise in the pink mountains, and for the first time, I remember being happy alone with myself. How key is that for teenage girls, to feel okay being alone? These are deep life lessons, they're gifts. The magic of the program is also in the community of youth that is built year after year. We learned that it was okay to be frustrated at our crazy parents, but that we needed to take responsibility for ourselves and not use our various traumas as a crutch. I can't emphasize how powerful it was to be 14 doing dishes with friends to the alpenglow of the high Rockies and be snorting with laughter at camp friends when life at home was lonely, hard, and isolating. I lived all year as a teenager for that one singular moment where somebody thought I was actually funny. I spent my youth knowing all I had to do was stay on track during the year, don't screw up, and summer would come again, and I would feel calm and part of a collective of other friends just like me. It was amazing to know that I wasn't alone in my difficult upbringing and to be taught that our childhoods were a testament to resilience and strength, that we could be leaders, that in fact, again, this is the power thing, that our stories and our difficult childhoods enhanced us. It didn't matter that we were latchkey kids with struggle. What we could have were skills and empathy, and that these things would serve us, not hinder us as we became adults. We could choose differently, and that most of all, we didn't have to feel ashamed. I completed the leadership program 13 years ago, so it was a while ago, but the memories are fairly fresh. Today, I think about the impact of the program on my transition into adult life, and so much of it is in the clarity of memories. Like the first time we went to camp and we toured the University of Guelph, I was salivating. I remember arriving and staring longingly at the brick buildings and all of these students holding books and drinking coffee with their friends and thinking like, oh my gosh, like people like books like me. And I felt this hope. But honestly, my situation at home hadn't gotten much better, and that idea of going somewhere like Guelph was a pipe dream. But then the very next day, my camp counselor, who was wise and quite observant, gently placed this paper application in my hand for the University of Victoria, and also placed the application for the bursary program, and wished me this beautiful, quiet good luck. And then it worked. I applied, and the next year, I stepped into my friend's rusty Volkswagen, despite my background, and I drove to the coast and went to university. I left behind my small town and its dysfunction for good. This is where the magic occurs. The program builds capacity, builds resilience, and this enables dreams to reach fruition, whatever they might be. And my message to you, that's my story, but there's lots of different stories. And I think what the foundation does is it creates these ripples of change. And so for me, I was supported then with this bursary. So I went to camp and it was amazing and great, but it didn't just stop. I got to go to college. And when I went to college, I was on par with kids whose parents were stable. I didn't have to work 3 jobs. I still have some student debt. It's not that simple. But it really helped, and we know that research shows that this is where support for lifting people out of poverty really matters. It's not just getting into trade school or going to chef school or going to college, but it's how fully you can participate in student life. Can you do co-ops? Can you do internships? Can you volunteer? If I hadn't had the bursary with this situation that was at home, this wouldn't have happened, and because of the bursary, I had the freedom to dive in. And as a result, I was surrounded by and motivated by smart people from around the world. I did a double major. I did every field school that someone gave me. Where I sometimes did feel like I was faking it with the rich kids, I was surprised when all of my leadership skills grown at camp showed their head, and I was quickly a leader on my campus community. For example, when I was an undergraduate, along with a group of friends, and because I had the support of the bursary to not have to work 3 jobs, I was able to set up and live collectively in a community house with recently arrived student refugees to Canada, mostly from Sudan. As a result, we then spent 2 busy years lobbying the university administration for funding to support the program and raised $80,000. We ran a large campaign and we won. I worked 40 hours a week on this for 3 years. More students arrived from their refugee camps, and this group of us felt collective pride we were able to do something. Without the bursary, I wouldn't have been able to participate in this and pull off the long nights of community activism. Instead, I probably would have been pulling night shift as a cleaner or a waitress or a barista, which may have been nice, but I would have been drowning in student debt, and I wouldn't have been able to pay my expensive fancy school tuition my parents wouldn't and couldn't pay. I probably would have quit, and I definitely wouldn't have the grades that I did. This is the power of the foundation. What it does is it takes people that are motivated and gives them the chance to breathe. It equalizes things. It creates opportunity. It grants youth space and time to explore the various opportunities without stress of total failure of financial collapse. It gives motivated youth the opportunity to take on things like internships or volunteer for a food drive, to follow their passion. The thing why this matters is that these activities are so key to the resume building that leads to success in our globalized world. Yet folks from complex backgrounds usually have to work so many jobs, there's no way they can volunteer. However, if you want to go to medical school, in my case, or you want to go to law school, you have to volunteer to get into those things. And so things like the bursary eliminate that catch-22 of finances now or future dreams later. Even with the support of the bursary, I still thought about this conundrum a lot, and it was always amazing because my friends from more privileged backgrounds, they didn't have to think about this because they had parental support, where I didn't. I know deep in my heart of hearts that without the bursary, I would have made very different choices. I would have been in survival mode. I would not be where I am today, a professional, a taxpayer, a community leader, without the help. The ripple of this also continued. Because of the bursary I received, it created space I created in campus life. I graduated with this very full resume. I was offered a life-changing internship year in Zambia, and it was here I began to realize my passion for women's health and community development. On my return to Canada, I swirled through a number of meaningful jobs, and then when I went to apply for the midwifery program at the University of British Columbia, I was so over-involved in so many projects, I must have fit some admission matrix of over-eager 20-something, and was accepted right away. If you can believe it, the foundation again stepped up, supported my education, and as a result, I was able to do things during the second degree, like take on extra practicums, including an amazing 4 months in a public hospital in Uganda, and I was very involved with some research projects with the broader Faculty of Medicine. Today, I live and work as a midwife in a small town on Vancouver Island. I find it somewhat ironic that I ran away from it all to end up somewhere not that different from my own hometown. Except now, everything is different. I work hard to empower my clients, many of them struggling with poverty, abusive relationships, single parenting, and I work with them to stop their cycle and explore a different way to be. I am happy. I look back and feel grace. How much of this would have been possible if I had been stuck scraping by at 17, willing to sell my soul to attend college and leave the chaos behind? It would have been very different. I know that for sure. This ripple and wave effect that I've been talking about, it didn't affect just me. My experiences with the foundation dramatically changed the culture of my family. My brother is 7 years younger than me, and every year he was jealous of the fun trips to camp that I would make. He grew up with this idea that I've come to understand as the privilege of possibility. He never questioned that he would just travel and do the same. He saw what I was doing, so he did the same. He attended a good university, he's a leader in his community, he's traveled and seen the world. Today, he is a lovely, healthy human being. My mom, not to be outdone by her children, has recently returned to school and is pursuing her master's at the University of British Columbia. Our time as a family is calm and peaceful. We celebrate that we have broken the multi-generational cycle of abuse and dysfunction in our family. We're okay. This is the magic of the foundation. This is the ripple, the web of change. When I was a child, it was lonely. My unstable family and childhood marked and taunted me. It created barriers. It could have dragged me down really hard. Yet, despite it all, today I am a very ordinary human being, and this is what I celebrate. So my biggest message to you sitting here on this beautiful evening is this. The bursary program is not just about catapulting single individuals to normative career success, but there is magic here, magic that gives people a chance to become peaceful, functional, and contributing members of society. For me, the past isn't present anymore. I am just one of the people who has an interesting past, and I can tell some really good stories at dinner parties. Nothing more, nothing less. For this, above all the functionality, but the things that come with it, the sense of possibility, the circle of close friends, the leadership opportunities, sitting on boards, and the decade spent happily ensconced in post-secondary education, for this I can thank my profound and years-long connection with the foundation and the bursary program. By giving one person, in this case the younger version of myself, tools in leadership, communication, self-reflection, and conflict resolution, and then, again, the kicker, providing access to higher education in a place where it would have been impossible, everything has changed. And this is why you have been so generous with your time to come here tonight. By being here, you are creating and have the power to create change. My story is just one of so many that spins from the work of the dedication of the foundation, and together we can create so many more of these ripples and waves. The Tim Horton Children's Foundation allows people like me to get on their feet, resilient, strong, capable feet. It gives young people a chance to fulfill the potential that was already waiting to bloom. It allows regular people to do big things. For this, I am so very grateful. Thank you for your support, because it really does mean everything.